Hello, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. Michael Wolf, Director of Public Works. This presentation is on our water rates workshop. Wanted to start off by talking a little bit about our sources of water, or sources of potable water or drinking water. For ease of conversation, we have three sources, each that have about 30%, each that have about a third of our water supply. Starting down at the bottom right, you can see Cayugas provides us the State Water Project water. And then we also have United Water Conservation District, which again, about a third of our water comes from United, which is groundwater that they pump and sell to the city. And then the other third, roughly, is from our Oxnard groundwater wells that we operate in the water division. Next, I want to talk a little bit about our operations. This is just a summary of how we acquire, treat, deliver, and administer water. And these are our major components of our expenditures. As just mentioned, our water supply. So about 50%, between 40 and 50% of our water budget is really just the acquisition of water, whether that's imported water from Cayugas or groundwater. We do also have a very large operations and maintenance expense. You can see there that there are several activities underneath that. I did want to point out that we do have a staff of 70 of highly trained and certified staff that operate and maintain our system. And as you can also see on the slide, that we do have quite a bit of infrastructure, and just some examples up there. 500 miles of water line pipes. A lot of those are aging and need replacement. And then we do monitor and test, a lot of compliance testing, a lot of state and federal compliance testing to make sure that it's safe drinking water. And then we do also have our financial responsibilities. That would be our debt coverage ratio as an example, or having our reserve fund balance. We'll be using the term acre foot. Well, I'll be using the term acre foot in this presentation, so I wanted to cover what that looks like, or provide a perspective of that. And so there's 325,851 gallons of water in 1 acre foot. And you can see that on the left, if you had 1 foot deep of water, it roughly equals about the size of a football field. So that should give you a perspective of what an acre foot of water is. And as you notice down at the bottom of the slide, in fiscal year 21-22, our total usage for all of our customers that year was just over 26,000 acre feet. So because we are talking about water rates, I think one of the first questions that could be asked is, well, what are we doing to keep our costs down? So what are our efficiency efforts to keep our costs as low as possible? So you can see some of them on the screen there. I won't go over all of them in detail, but I will note that there are a few that are very focused on, and that is making sure that we have low bids, meaning we pay the lowest for our contracts, for the most qualified contractors. We also make sure we do audits, reviewing our audits not only for water loss, meaning like broken pipes, but also we do audit our budget and expenses on a routine basis. Another big one that we do is make sure we go after as many grants as possible that we are eligible for. And in the bottom right, water meters. We are, as you know, in the process of replacing our water meters across the entire service area, and that is to ensure accurate meter reads. In addition to those, one of the biggest things that we do to ensure that we maximize the purchases of our groundwater, and that is a very focused attempt on making sure we're as efficient as possible. So with the information on the screen, you can see that in fiscal year 21-22, on the top there, where we talk about imported water, so that's water we get from Cayugas through the State Water Project, you can see that that roughly per acre foot cost is about $1,583. And then as you notice at the bottom part of the screen, when you look at the groundwater, so that's both city groundwater and groundwater we purchased from United, that acquisition of that water is roughly a little less than $600 an acre foot. And that comparison, as you notice, is just shy of $1,000. And if you think about the fact that we purchased over 15,000 acre foot of groundwater in that fiscal year, there's a difference between the cost of import water and groundwater close to $15 million. So again, one of the things that we do to ensure that we have the most effective and efficient operations is to make sure that our operations, maintenance, and capital components for our groundwater system, our groundwater wells, is operating optimally. We also make sure that we're working with local agencies like the Fox Canyon GMA so that we have all the governances and regulations in place to access all of the groundwater that we are allowed to. Next, I wanted to just give a perspective of inflation. I think everybody knows what's happening in the last couple of years, and specifically the last year about inflation, but this provides a little bit of context in terms of a 5-year period. So if you look on the left, in 2017, the average cost of certain items are there, and those are milk, gas, and eggs. And then in 2022, the average cost of those items have significantly increased, and you can see the percentages there on the right. So the next slide, or this slide, is really about putting those and putting that inflation into perspective of what influences our water operations. So again, same setup on the left. We have an average 2017 cost, on the right, an average 2022 cost. You can look at some of our utilities that we have to pay for as an operator. So that's natural gas and electricity. Those have gone up significantly. And even more so, most folks know that natural gas has gone up significantly more in the early part of 2023. And then again, just some perspective of other items that we use or as part of our operations, whether that's a vehicle increasing by 22% if you just look at a mid-sized truck. And then the last two, as mentioned before, this is the largest part of our operating budget, is the purchase and acquisition of water. And you can see that those two things have gone up a significant amount over the last 5 years. So this is an interesting slide. This is from the U.S. Bureau of Land Statistics, or U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is the consumer price index over a period of time. On the x-axis you have time, on the y-axis you have percentage increase. So this is showing a disproportional increase in water rates versus other items, which is the gray line on the bottom, and food prices, which is the blue line on the bottom. So you can see that there's significantly a disproportional increase in cost for water and sewer rates. So before we go into talking about the rates themselves, I wanted to provide some goals that the team used before we make any recommendations to input the information into the rate model. Obviously, the first two on the screen you can see basically want to cover our operational infrastructure investment costs. That way we have a viable system. Legally compliant means things like Proposition 218, making sure our rates are Proposition 218 compliant. And then promote financial viability, that's existing and future financial viability, and things like making sure we meet debt coverage ratios and that we have a proper reserve fund balance. And then we also, as part of our goals for rate setting, is to make sure we're looking at community values and fairness and equity. So with those considerations in terms of goals, there are 7 factors on the screen that heavily influence the rate model and subsequently the rates that we'd be recommending. So each one of these 7 items, there's a staff recommendation on the slide, and I won't go through them all. But you'll notice that the recommendations are there, and these are basically the significant input in consideration for the rate model. So we suggest that at the workshop that these should be discussed in detail. So providing a little perspective in terms of the water rate history. So over a 10-year period, these are the rate adjustments that have occurred. You can see the last rate increase was in fiscal year 17 and 18. And in fact, the last adjustment actually was a reduction in rates in fiscal year 21, 22. And then on the bottom right, you can see that to give some perspective, that a single family home based on current rates using an average amount of water, which is 900 cubic feet, that monthly bill right now is $50.39. So next, before we get into the rate recommendations, we wanted to provide some information about our customer classifications. So you can see the majority of our customer classifications fall in one of these 5 categories. And of those 5 categories, residential is the highest of our classifications in terms of volume. About 85% of all of our customers are residential. And you can see we have more than 43,000 meters. Okay, so this one is the start of 3 scenarios that are going to be shown in the presentation. And this one is the recommended scenario by staff. Each one of the scenarios shows that there are some sensitivities to the rate model when you have certain inputs. Namely, these 3 scenarios actually have different capital improvement program inputs in terms of a sliding scale of whether or not we want to do a moderate to low capital improvement program or a very aggressive or ultra aggressive capital improvement program in terms of dollar amounts. And so if you look at the actual chart and you focus in on the top line, line number 1, which is a 3/8 inch or 3/4 inch meter, that is the typical meter size for single family residential. And then you go across the screen, you look at the current rates in column B, our current rates for that fixed cost. Now these are just the fixed cost, which is the meter cost, is $20.60. And with the recommended scenario, that would change in the first year, and as you see in column C, to $22.81. So as I go through these scenarios, I'm really going to focus in on single family residential, again, because they are the majority of our customers. So the first one was the fixed charges. This is still scenario 1, but this is the variable charge. So this is the volumetric charge based on the amount of water you use. Again, focusing in on the top there where it says number 1, SFR, which is single family residential. You can see the 3 tiers that we have. Those tiers are broken up by certain usages. Tier 1, 0 to 9, 100 cubic feet, 9 to 15, and over 15. The current rate is in column B. And then focusing in on tier 1, that's $3.31. And then if the recommended scenario was approved, that would change to $4.43. And as you go down the table, you can see the differences. So the next one, again, this is another scenario, and this would be what we consider a moderate capital improvement program scenario. And again, showing the sensitivity the model has as you start to increase the cost, the burn rate, if you will, of capital projects. Focusing in on top again, line number 1, as that would be a typical single family residential meter size, and $20.60 for current rate. And if this scenario was the one that moved forward, it would be $25.54 for that first year. That's the fixed charge. Next one, this one will be the variable charge for scenario 2. Again, very similar setup to previous slides. If you concentrate at the top, single family residential, you'll see for tier 1, $3.31, which is the current rate. And if this scenario was to move forward, that tier 1 rate would be $4.73. Last scenario, this was the ultra aggressive capital improvement program. Again, focusing on the line number 1, you can see existing rate $20.60. And with this scenario, that fixed charge would go to $31.56. This is still scenario 3. We switched over to the variable charges, and if you look again at the upper left in the single family residential, under this scenario for tier 1, the current rate is $3.31, and with this scenario, proposed rate would be $5.41. So that concludes the scenario overview. I did want to remind everybody of our ratepayer assistance program. You can see on the screen there's 2 of them that we noted here. State 1, which is the low-income household water assistance program for qualified customers. You can see the dollar amount available for that program. And then we also have a city program, which is Project Assist, also for income eligible customers, and it's up to $15 per month for the bill. So now with all that backup and background information, we're going to focus the next couple slides on the recommendation scenario, which is the moderate to low capital improvement program. And so these are some sample bills if using that scenario, when using that scenario, the recommended scenario. Again, the customer classifications are on the left, so SFR, single family residential, MFR, multifamily residential. We put together some sample bills based on average usages. So if we focus in on the single family residential line on the top and look at the current bill column where it's $50.39, that's the current bill. And then under this scenario, scenario 1, which is the recommended scenario, that bill would change to $62.68 per month, which is a change of $12.29 or roughly 24.4%. This is the scenario 2, not the recommended scenario, but scenario 2, again, trying to show how the a increase in this capital improvement program would affect potential bills, focusing in on line number 1, which is single family residential. $50.39 is the current bill, and the proposed bill in this scenario would go to $68.11, and that's the change of $17.72. And the last one, again, scenario 3, sample bill for single family residential, starting at the $50.39. With this scenario, which was a ultra aggressive capital improvement program, would go to $80.25, which is a difference of just under $30 a month. So staff is moving forward with a Proposition 218 process, and this is the timeline that would do that. So roughly in early March, we'll be mailing out the required Proposition 218 notices. That is a requirement of that proposition and is a 45-day noticing requirement, a minimum of 45 days noticing. And then right now we're currently targeting May 2nd as the public hearing for proposed rates. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be available at the workshop to answer any questions. Thank you.